Welcome to the Liberated Joy in Learning podcast. I'm Brina Beckstrand, and we're continuing our discussion of Bradley Staats' book, Never Stop Learning, and how it helps us improve our learning. Hands down, the quote I love the most from this book, and that I quote a lot, is, "Given the power that comes from asking questions, why do we so often rush to an answer?" Just taking time to not rush to answers helps us wonder shamelessly better. Also, Staats gives us one way to think about the questions more a few pages later. If you hold strong views on the basis of information you have at the moment, but you are unwilling to change them as you learn new things, you can be sure that you'll always be learning. How does not rushing to answer questions and taking time to reflect help you keep learning?
Well, we discussed this a little bit the last time when we were discussing this. If you're asking questions, you open yourself up to new possibilities, to new directions, to new information. If you don't stop and ask questions, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself or putting blinders on to where you're just kind of focused on one direction. And while that may be a good direction, it may not be the best direction. I can't remember if I've used this in the past. I spent some time in Japan. And one of the sayings that they say a lot in Japan is there's many paths up Mount Fuji. Meaning that there's a lot of different ways to get to the top. You don't always have to go the same route. Everybody's got a different path to get to the top. And if you're not asking questions, you may miss your path that's the best for you. Mm-hmm. Just because somebody else did it one way doesn't mean that's the best way for you to do it. And if we don't ask questions, then we miss out on that.
Right. I love the idea of not reinventing the wheel every time, where I can ask the same question and come up with a new answer that's just as valuable as the answer that I got yesterday.
Right.
And I don't have to keep constantly thinking of new questions. And I love a really good question. I love new questions. I love all of that. But there is value in saying, okay, I'm going to ask this question every single day, and I'm going to help that it will help me grow in some particular way. But I don't have to come up with a new question.
Right.
I can just use the same one and go even further with that one question. So another way to look at asking questions is giving yourself time to think. Staats helps us understand how to freely experiment, explore, and discover better when he says, as you take time to think, you recognize things that you already know but haven't taken the time to understand. You also make connections between new ideas. Moreover, as you reflect and identify what you don't know, you can figure out strategies to fill those gaps. So how can we freely experiment and explore and discover as we take time to reflect?
Well, I think it's what he says right there. As you reflect and identify what you don't know, you're able to figure out the path that you need to take to get there.
Yeah.
And by asking questions and realizing that you don't have all the answers, it's okay, and that's fun.
Right.
You know, it's like you said, you can ask the same question each day and get a different answer.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation.
Right. It's like, when you exercise and you push yourself a little bit harder, and when and you do that with your mind, right? So if you're pondering the same question, you're pushing yourself to come up with new answers for that same question. Right. You're pushing your body, your mind, to work a little bit harder, to go a little further than it's ever gone before. Right.
And if you take time to pause and ask the question, you're able to see different opportunities. In my other life as a landscape architect, I've designed a lot of entry monuments. And it's very easy to fall for communities. And it's very easy to fall in the same habit of doing the same thing over and over and over again just to get it done. But if you, and this is the example again, is it's the same thing for every time. What is the site telling us? What is this site telling us that we can use to create a unique experience for this development? So I'm asking the same question, but if I stop and look at the answers, I'm going to get a different inspiration every time. And so everything becomes unique. It's much more inspiring, much more exciting for the work I do by asking that question. Another aspect of learning that Staats can help us with is what failures or weaknesses to address. This helps us understand the primary lens owning our failures and successes, but also the learning principle of joyful learning is owned, put on hold, or let go. Staats says, in many cases, weaknesses are things that one is not only not good at, but also unlikely to become good at. Even with attention, they may not improve much. So which weaknesses should get your attention? Staats claims that your critical weaknesses should. These are the weaknesses that stand in the way of accomplishing the larger goal. To identify them, we should think about the weaknesses that can help support your strengths and go after those. So, question is, what weaknesses have you chosen not to address?
I mean, it's tough because I'm thinking, and some of this goes to the fact that none of us are great at learning, so it's hard
Right.
to pinpoint these.
Right.
But the first thing that I'm thinking of is the strategy games. Chess, Settlers of Catan, some of
Right.
those that take a long time, Villainous.
Right.
I really, those aren't things that I want to get good at.
Right.
And so clearly, I think it's good to trust your gut on that. If there's
Right.
things that really just are not calling your attention to spend time on, that those are things not have to worry about. Now, if there was, my life changed and I had different things that I was spending time on, I may re-examine that.
Right.
Those would be good to play around with so that then I can be good in other areas of my life.
Right.
But right now, those don't help me with my goals.
Right.
In general.
Yeah, when I was younger, I loved listening to a guy by the name of Hiram Smith, or was it Hank Smith? I think it was Hiram Smith, the guy that started the Franklin Institute, Franklin Covey, and things like that. But he was talking about I can't remember what the process was, but he related a story of Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin came up with, I think it was 12 weaknesses that he wanted to work on. And he took time each time, to take a certain amount of time and work on this weakness to become better. And he showed it to a friend of his, and the friend of his said, they're great, but you forgot one. And so what was that? Well, it's humility. And so Franklin said, okay, I'll add it to my list. And when he would work his way through his other weaknesses, he'd get to humility, and he'd try to improve on that, and he would fail all of his goals until he realized that wasn't important to him. Humility, if you read about Benjamin Franklin, he was not a humble man. He was very prideful, very proud, but he was an incredible mind, did some amazing things. But he realized that's not important to me, so I'm not going to waste time on it. I'm not going to feel like I'm a failure by wasting time on something that doesn't mean anything to me.
Right.
And so I think it's important that we understand what weaknesses we have and whether or not they're important to us, whether or not they're a governing value, I think is what the thought was.
Yeah.
What are some critical weaknesses you have chosen to address?
Talking to people just,
Right.
without being able to go back in and edit what I say, which we can do with this podcast.
Yeah, with this podcast, we can do that quite a bit.
But, talking to people on the phone at work and, just with coworkers and things like that. I've been a stay-at-home for a very long time, and I love my job outside of the home. But I've decided to just say, hey, I've got to do this. I've got to learn how to talk to people and not be able to go back in and edit it.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm working on right now.
Well, that's good. For me, what I mentioned a little bit earlier is asking questions in my professional life, asking questions that help me generate ideas for what I'm, instead of just sticking with same old, asking questions like, and I've got a note around my desk that says, what's the big idea? And it's not what's the big idea? It's an actual, I think it was
not
by
sarcastic,
Sasaki.
but you seriously
It's sarcastic.
want to know.
What's the big idea? What's the 30,000-foot view of what you're trying to accomplish?
Right.
That's the first question that needs to be asked, at least for me. So that's something I'm trying to do better at. Lastly, Staats has some great information that helps us find joy in our learning relationships and in training with a mentor. In Chapter 9, Learning from Others, he says, to overcome an inward focus, you need to build relationships, try to repeat your interactions, take an inquiry approach to working together, and teach others. In isolation, I may be able to come up with an interesting way to think about things, but the back and forth of having that idea challenged is what tests and thus improves me. So what most resonates with you in what he says about learning from others?
I underlined back and forth.
Right.
It's too easy to spew something and then somebody takes off and runs.
Right.
When I have a conversation with somebody, I want them to ask questions. I want them to challenge me, but also not just dismiss it.
Right.
I want to have a conversation. What was good about what I said? What could be, what do you want to build off of that? I
Right.
want a back and forth and not
Right.
just you said this, I'm going to go this direction and see
Right.
ya, right? I want a
Right.
back and forth.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing when you are working with a mentor or you are trying to mentor somebody else is you have to have the back and forth and be honest and forthright about what you see or what asking questions about, is that good or is that bad, whatever. But you need to have that back and forth, or else you're just stagnant. You don't.
Right.
Like he says, every once in a while you can come up with a glimmer of a golden nugget, but that's not going to happen very often.
Right. And a lot of it is, both sides being humble enough to say, well, this is how I'm seeing it. What do you think? Does my perspective help you improve?
Right.
And maybe not. Maybe the back and forth needs to be, how can we help each other better? And it's improving how we help each other.
Right. All right, well, that wraps up our discussion of Bradley Staats' book, Never Stop Learning. If you find other interesting thoughts in his book about learning, we'd love to hear them. Now, next time we're going to start a new season on our podcast. Another way to describe it is just a new category that we're going to call life experiences. As we've been going through this process of doing these podcasts, and as we work on them, we notice things in our life that we can use to associate and help you get an idea of how to use Learning Liberated in your life. So in this next season, we're going to talk about life experiences that have helped us understand learning better. And then we'll come back to discussing how other theories of learning and growth helps us understand Learning Liberated principles later on. But now the next few podcasts, we're going to be talking about these life experiences. So that's it for today. If you have questions or comments, you can message us at learningliberated@gmail.com or on our Learning Liberated Facebook group with any questions or comments. And again, if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone else who might enjoy it as well. Thank you. Bye.